thank you for watching. Today we're going to be looking in Psalm 56, verse 3. Psalm 56, verse 3. And as you're turning there, let me go ahead and give you some background to this psalm. First, this message is entitled, When I'm Afraid, I'll Trust Thee. When I'm Afraid, I'll Trust Thee. And again, we're looking at Psalm 56, 3. And this psalm was written when David was captured by the Philistines in Gath. This is the event when, out of fear, David fled Saul by running to the Philistines instead of God. And this is the case where he feigns mad in order to escape, because they recognize him as the one who killed Goliath. So let's go ahead and look at the verse, Psalm 56, verse 3. What time I am afraid, I will trust in thee. Again, Psalm 56, 3. What time I am afraid, I will trust in thee. So we see in this verse that God wants you to trust him instead of being afraid. We see in this verse that we will face times of fear, and we must prepare our response for those times now. First, we'll see that we will face times of fear. The first part of verse 3 says, what time I am afraid, or when I am afraid. Not if I face time of fear, or if I might happen to be afraid. No, we will face times of fear. That is inevitable. We see that even Jesus had a time of fear. Luke 22:44. Jesus was in agony because he knew what he was going to suffer. He knew what he was going to have to go through. He didn't want to have to go through that agony, that pain of dying on the cross, being separated from God the Father. Jesus had fear, but his response is key, because feeling the emotion of fear is not a sin. Feeling it is a natural emotion to feel fear, but your response is key. So we see that we will face times of fear, but that we must prepare our response for those times now. We are to trust God when it is hardest to do so. It says in the verse, what time I am afraid, I will trust in thee. And we must make sure that we know God well enough, that we are prepared to trust in him. Jesus knew what he was going to go through, yet he still followed through with it. He even asked God, Lord, if it is your will, Father, if it's your will, take this cup from me. But nevertheless, let your will be done, not mine. Why did Jesus do this? Because he trusted God the Father. He knew him. He trusted him. Jesus did not let fear rule his life. He let only God rule his life. Jesus prepared for this trial by praying, by talking with God. This is what David ought to have done. But instead he followed his fear and ran to where he logically thought he'd be safe, but he was far from it. He put himself in a more dangerous situation. Because the safest place to be is in God's will. And if David had sought God, God would have directed him to wherever that was. And that's the same with our lives. If we seek God, he will lead us to where we ought to go. So are you seeking God? Are you praying? Are you getting to know him to find out his will? Because if we don't trust God now, why will we during fearful times? If we don't trust God now when times are easy and we're relying on ourselves now, then that's what we're going to do when times are hard. We're going to rely on ourselves, or maybe others, but God will be the last one we turn to, when he ought to be the first. This is what happened to David. He trusted in himself, his own thought, like, I'll be safe there. They won't recognize me. So he ran instead of trusting and seeking God. The question is, are you really trusting God? Because if somebody had asked David before he fled, are you trusting God? I have little doubt he would have said, yes, I'm trusting God. But he still ran. And many of us probably would too. So are you really trusting God? We have this bench here. I could say till I'm blue in the face, I trust that this bench can hold my weight. But if I never sit down on it, am I really trusting it? That's the same way with God. Until we sit down, until we follow him, until we take those steps where he's leading us, we are not really trusting him. Are you trusting him? Are you sitting on where he is leading you? Or are you making your own blind path like David? In this passage, we see that David faced a time of fear, and he didn't have the right response, at least not at first. Because we see here that he did trust him. Because after he was captured, he remembered his God. And he sought his God. And he found his God. He was saved from it. Because when David remembered his God, he was able to say, "What time I am afraid, I will trust in thee." Are you prepared? Will you be prepared? Are you seeking God? Are you praying? But most importantly, are you trusting God now? Thank you for watching.